School prayer has remained a subject of national debate in the United States throughout the 20th century. Engel versus Vitale ushered in an era in which school prayer was effectively forbidden. However, with the passage of the Equal Access Act in 1984, some forms of school prayer were again sanctioned. The Department of Education now issues a guide to help school administrators practically apply congressional laws and Supreme Court decisions concerning school prayer. An international perspective shows that current U.S. policy towards school prayer is relatively unique, as most developed countries disallow prayer in public schools.
Prayer should not be mandatory in any public school setting, much less should it be led by a teacher or any other school official. Public schools are meant for people with all types of religious backgrounds, whether you come from an old school Church of Christ family or an atheist family. Public schools are funded by taxpayers of all different beliefs. Not all taxpayers want teachers leading prayers in public schools, especially if they have children of their own that they do not want involved in prayer attending a public school. It would be forcing them to pay for something they don't believe in or agree with, just so their child can get an education. Public schools exist to educate children, not force them into religion with teachers leading prayer, because no young child will voluntarily choose to not participate if most of the class is participating and it is being led by a teacher. If there are no teacher-led prayers, then students won't feel as pressured to participate. Therefore, all religious backgrounds should be respected and taken into consideration when debating whether or not teachers should be required to lead prayers in public school. Just because a teacher can't lead prayer doesn't mean students who choose to pray at school don't have the option to. There is nothing wrong with private and or silent prayer. The First Amendment gives us the freedom of religion, and public schools are ran by the government. So if teachers that are in government employees are required to lead prayer, then the government is violating our freedom of religion. Some parents may want their children to grow up with a religious influence, but not all parents will want that religious influence taught at school. A lot of parents would rather their children get their religious influence at home or in church because some teachers can have a very strong influence on children, and that isn't always a good thing. There's a chance they may be affected in a negative way. Teachers have a big influence on younger children because they spend nearly just as much time with children as their parents do, especially if a child's parents are divorced and have shared custody of the child. Our founding fathers specifically added the separation of church and state into our Constitution, not because they were anti-religious, but because so many Americans came to this country to escape religious persecution. History is full of examples of religious fanaticism resulting in war, destroying countries, and leaving immense death and destruction. The benefit of living in the United States is our freedom, a truly unique way of life. Acceptance is not a widely accepted idea throughout the world, yet it is the foundation of our country. If we allow such strong opinions and beliefs from our teachers to influence our children, the most vulnerable among us, it may cause unnecessary strife within the family. This is not just in a religious case, but also anti-religion. The job of our teachers is to teach facts, skills. If simple prayer is allowed, like everything else, it will open the door to more and more opinions of our schools could potentially be more about teaching personal agendas instead of skills that are required for our students to succeed.
Allowing teachers to lead prayer or Bible study in school could never be fair or just. Most of the people advocating prayer in schools are advocating Christian prayer. If Christian prayer were to be allowed, then prayers of other religions such as Muslim, Buddhist, or Jewish would have to be allowed as well. They are citizens and pay taxes that build, operate, and maintain schools, therefore they have equal rights. Not to mention it would be a terrible burden on the schools. Teaching and monitoring religion is not the purpose of public schools, and they are not trained or equipped to do so. The places for prayer and religious instruction are the home or the church. It is the parents' responsibility to educate their children in religious matters, not the schools. The advocates of prayer in schools may have less than Christian reasons for their advocacy. reasons like getting elected or re-elected to public office by sincere but uninformed voters. Jesus Christ would not vote for prayer in public schools. He never forced himself, his teachings, or his prayers onto anyone. If a group of teachers wish to meet for prayer or scriptural study in the faculty lounge during free time in the school day or before or after school, most legal experts see no constitutional reason why they should not be permitted to do so, as long as the activity is outside the presence of students and does not interfere with their duties or the rights of other teachers. It is dishonest to call any prayer voluntary that is encouraged or required by a public official or legislature. By definition, if the government suggests that students pray, whether by penning the prayer, asking them to vote whether to pray, or setting aside time to pray, it is endorsing and promoting that prayer. It is coercive for schools to schedule worship as an official part of the school day, school sports or activities, or to use prayer to formalize graduation ceremonies. Such prayers are more mandatory than voluntary. School prayer may lead to intolerance. Public prayer will highlight religious differences of which students may have been unaware of. Those students who abstain from school prayer may be ostracized. As employees of the government, public school teachers and administrators are subject to the Establishment Clause and thus required to be neutral concerning religion while carrying out their duties. That means, for example, that school officials do not have the right to pray with or in the presence of students during the school day. Of course, teachers and administrators, like students, bring their faith with them through the schoolhouse door each morning. Because of the First Amendment, however, school officials who wish to pray or engage in other religious activities, unless they are silent, should do so outside of the presence of students.